I, I am Lord Sabat of the Death Guard, and this is the end of all things. After the Great War, after Horus failed to remake the Imperium, a fraction of us regrouped in the Orpheus sector in the Babington system. We had liberated that place during the Crusade, fortified it, wrapped it in steel, both in the void of space and on the jagged ground below. But they came for us. They called it the Scouring, as though we were little more than muck to be cleaned away. The irony of that name still amuses me. But we bled them at Babington. Their wounds were heavy, but ours much heavier. Drayton and I, the only survivors. Drayton, he was a beast of a man, a giant, even for an Astartes, hair all over him. I called him Fluffy. He never liked the name, even less now, and I think it reminds him of the old ways and how much we lost. We found the rest of our legion deep within the Eye of Terror, on the Plague World. We were folded into the third cohort of the first company under Typhus. And Typhus may have changed, may have been blessed physically, but I always reckoned that bastard a narcissist deep down, and it seemed that part of him would never rot away. Maybe that part of him was always rotten. Later, the cohort came to be called a sepsis, the company a plague company. At first, I resisted the change. Those blessings bestowed upon us from Nurgle. I never thought myself worthy after the slaughter at Babington. But Fluffy, he was different. He revelled in it. He revelled in the power and the promise of a new beginning. He wanted vengeance. He wanted ruin, rust, and decay. He wanted to break his enemies with it, and he was rewarded for his devotion. Thousands of years passed, thousands of long and unending years of war and the grinding wheel of time. We made murder, we made gardens for the dead. We became cancer, and they could not cut us out. And then I met the brothers. They had stood in the council hall of Nicaea. They had heard the false emperor's judgment and his prophecy. They had burned those words into their minds, as clear as I tell you now. Woe betide he who ignores my warning or breaks faith with me, for he shall be my enemy, and I will visit such destruction upon him and all his followers, that until the end of all things he shall rue the day he turned from my light. The brothers saw truth in those lies. The brothers saw a future where there would come a day, where there would come a time, at the end of all things, when the false emperor's light would not shine. Those brothers, now my own, spoke these words to all that would hear them. They spoke them again and again for thousands of years. None believed, not then, not until the great rift and the Noctis Aeterna, the long darkness that followed, when the false emperor's beacon was extinguished, when all creatures were turned from his light, when the end of all things began. Before the Noctis Aeterna, the brothers had called for warbands to join their cause. None came. Afterwards, Sepsis and Maledictums and Victoriums came willingly. All had heard the stories, the prophecies, the promises. Only now the stories were validated, the promises made true by the rotting night sky, the bloated ebbing warp, and the great rift spilling like an oil slick across an ocean of stars. So-called plague colonies have been drawn together in the past, when powerful lords or princes have exerted their influence. This is different. This is the end of all things. No one need rue the day they turn from his light, because his light has failed. The Astronomicon is no more. A weak sputtering thing now pierces the warp instead. Mankind may believe his light return, but we know differently. We know what ruin and corruption look like. The light tower has fallen. The false god is dead on his throne. This is the end of all things, and we are its heralds!